Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we have a 2013 Mini Cooper JCW GP. JCW stands for John Cooper Works, and the GP stands for Grand Prix. This is an R56 generation Mini Cooper, meaning it has a turbocharged 1.6 liter inline-4 engine. But the special thing about the GP edition is that very few of them were made. Only around 2,000 were made for the global market, and 500 of those came to the United States. Now, what does that mean in terms of market value? Well, consider that the average R56 Mini Cooper base model, or S, they have depreciated like crazy. But one of these GP models still goes for, on average, $25,000. Considering that the original MSRP was around $40,000 back in 2013, that means these haven't depreciated all that much, not even 50%. So a few specs about this car. The 1.6 liter turbo inline-4 makes 211 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque. It comes with a 6-speed manual transmission with no limited slip differential. It uses the brakes to mimic an LSD. We'll see how effective that actually is. This has uprated coilover suspension compared to the regular JCW, and the spring rates have been increased by 50%. You can actually adjust the height of these coilovers like you would with any aftermarket coilover. But even the way it sits from the factory looks like it's been slammed on aftermarket suspension. And the fitment with these wheels is so aggressive. Obviously, it's a very short car, which gives it almost a square, boxy feel, like a little pit bull. This car only weighs around 2,600 pounds, which is super light. To put that in perspective, a first-gen FRS or BRZ weighs at least 100 to 150 pounds more. Obviously, it's front-wheel drive only. We have these amazing Recaro seats as standard, and the back seat has been removed for weight savings, as well as to make space for a rear strut tower brace. Now, with that being said, let's drive this R56 JCW GP, often referred to as the GP2, as the R53 generation before it also had a GP, which is known as the GP1, and the current generation also has a GP, which people call the GP3. That one only comes with an automatic transmission. First things first, we have the car in sport mode, which stiffens up this electric power steering, also improves the throttle response, and we've held the traction control button to turn DSC fully off. Kind of a shame that the R56 generation moved to electric power steering. Hopefully that doesn't mean the steering rack is completely numb. This car is stiff on these Bilstein coilovers. This car feels like it belongs on a racetrack. After all, it is a Grand Prix. It's meant for track work. It's the most hardcore OEM street legal Mini from the generation. Pretty quiet engine from inside the car. This GP specific exhaust doesn't actually make that much sound from inside. Despite only having 211 horsepower, the car is so damn light that the power to weight still feels adequate. Yeah, this thing needs a mechanical LSD. Whatever trickery they're doing with the brakes to mimic an LSD can only get you so far. The corner exit traction is definitely limited. But wow, this car feels so light on its feet. I can just throw it around, toss it into corners, and the car just takes it. This is an absolute riot of a little front-wheel drive hot hatch. This electric power steering rack actually has a ton of feedback. I mean, it feels better than some hydraulic racks I've used in other cars. The thing is just wriggling with feedback. Every little camber on the road, every little pebble, you feel it through the steering wheel. That's awesome. The suspension though, it's all over the place. Never been a huge fan of Bilstein aftermarket suspension, and this feels like it's an aftermarket unit dropped into a Mini Cooper. Revs out to about 6.5 grand. Does seem to die off a little towards redline, but there's a good amount of mid-range torque once you get past the low-end turbo lag. Easy to heel toe, good pedal placement. Manual transmission is not the best, if I'm being honest. I don't like how large the knob is, the shift knob. It makes it feel a little bit out of character for such a lightweight, nimble car. The shift quality, a little bit rubbery, a little bit vague. But wow, this thing is just a riot. I can just go flat out everywhere. Just absolutely throw it into these corners. The only thing Ivan has done to this car in terms of mods is throw on a set of Advan Yova 8008 tires, which is an older 200 treadwear compound, but very well suited to this kind of car. Plenty of grip. Again, I do wish it had a mechanical limited slip differential. Some understeer there. Wheel spin there. Yeah, see, I just can't get on the throttle early enough coming out of those second gear hairpins. But even then, this car's so much fun to drive. This is the most fun front wheel drive car I've ever driven on this road. That includes the FK8 and FL5 Civic Type Rs. That includes the all-wheel drive GR Corolla and the Hyundai Elantra N. This car is more fun to drive on a tight back road than any of those, hands down. If it had a proper mechanical LSD, this thing would be untouchable as far as front wheel drive thrills go, in my opinion. Obviously, it's nowhere near as refined as any of those other cars I just mentioned. Those are all much newer. It's an all-out street legal track car that happens to also be very competent on a bumpy back road. You can just throw it into corners willy-nilly. You feel exactly what the front tires are doing through the steering wheel. If only I could put the power down a little bit earlier. Oh my god, I'm in love with this thing. If I'm being totally honest, I came into this review with pretty low expectations. I've never been the biggest Mini Cooper fan from a driving dynamics standpoint, but this thing has proved me wrong. Absolutely murdering the downhill. Whew. Suspension definitely could be improved. It feels stiff, but not all that composed on a bumpy road. I'm sure it'd be fine on a smooth racetrack, but it could use a higher quality damper for this type of driving. Oh my god, I'm in love with this thing. Who knew that this limited production R56 Mini Cooper JCW GP would be so much freaking fun? Let's do one more straight line pull. I wish the shifter was a little bit notchier and slicker. It works just fine. It just doesn't have the best shift quality to it. I bet I could keep up with almost anything on a downhill with this car. It just gives me so much confidence going into corners. And with mechanical LSD, if it had one, I think this car would be untouchable on the downhill for a completely stock vehicle. Well, minus the LSD, that is. Oh man, such a fun car. I've been so lucky for having one of these. Only 500 in the US, and now I understand why. This thing's an absolute blast. Pretty sure I would leave my BRZ in the dust on this road. What a fantastic little car. Caught me totally off guard. This is one of my new favorite front wheel drive cars of all time. Right up there with the DC2 Integra Type R. That's how good this is to drive. It's not without fault. Like I mentioned, it definitely could use a mechanical diff, and it could definitely use better suspension, but outside of those two things, man, this thing's awesome. The 6-piston front Brembo brakes stop this thing on a dime. The square tire setup means this thing loves to rotate, and that's what I love to see from a little front-wheel drive performance car. So let me know what you think of the JCW GP2. Do you think it's worth, on average, $25,000 on the market today for one of 500? Such a rare car in the US. I feel like this car might actually be a little bit undervalued. Yes, Minis aren't known for having the best reliability, but if you can get past that, if you can focus on the driving experience and the rarity, this thing I would say is worth every penny of 25 grand. I can't think of another $25,000 front drive or even all-wheel drive car that offers nearly as many thrills, new or used. Is it actually that much better than a normal JCW? I haven't driven them back to back to be able to answer that question. But from where I'm sitting, this thing is an absolute riot. And if you have one, hold on to it. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.